To talk more about this, let's bring in our Ukraine correspondent, Gulliver Cragg. Gulliver, Russia now has said it will resume participation in the grain agreement to let the ships pass through the Black Sea. So what does this mean? Does this mean the panic's over?
Well, it's certainly a success for Ukraine, the United Nations and Turkey. The United Nations and Turkey who brokered the original deal to facilitate grain exports on July the 22nd, because what they decided after Russia's announcement on Saturday was basically to call Moscow's bluff and send 16 ships anyway, despite the fact that Moscow was no longer guaranteeing their security. And those ships got through safely, and that basically showed that for the Russians, it was one thing to say they wouldn't guarantee the safety of ships, but actually going so far as to engineer some kind of incident or fire on one of the ships, that clearly would have been another matter indeed. And I think it's after that with also the Turkish President Erdogan putting pressure on Vladimir Putin, the Russians decided that perhaps it was better to fall into line. Seen from Kiev, it seems pretty clear that the Russian statement that they received a written guarantee from Ukraine that they wouldn't go for any further attacks, for example, on the port of Sevastopol. I think that was what was implied anyway, was not the real reason why Russia decided to agree to resume its participation in the deal. Much more likely, it was this provocative move on Monday of sending the 16 ships anyway, plus pressure from the Turkish side, which is a very important commercial partner for Russia. In any case, the panic is absolutely not over in Ukraine, because already since the 18th of September, the waiting time for inspections by Russian inspectors in the Bosphorus under this deal for ships trying to get into the Black Sea to bring Ukraine from Ukrainian ports has increased by 5 times on average. Ukraine says that that is a deliberate move by Russia, increasing the waiting time and thereby very, very significantly increasing the costs of shipping and therefore the costs of Ukrainian grain for people all around the world. And they think that the Russians were doing this very much deliberately. And the question is, will they continue doing this, or will they revert to how they were operating before, with the inspections going ahead relatively quickly and smoothly?
Gulliver, there's been a lot of concern about Ukraine's electricity supply. How has that been holding up after the attacks we saw there on Monday?
So Monday's attacks clearly damaged some important parts of electricity infrastructure in Ukraine, with the result that the scheduled blackouts are now longer and more frequent across the country, but they have now reverted to being scheduled blackouts rather than sudden and uncontrolled blackouts, as were seen on Monday across much of the capital, Kiev. The authorities in Kiev region say, though, that it's not out of the question that there could be a much longer blackout coming if some more infrastructure is damaged, and that people should prepare to perhaps be without electricity for as much as 2 weeks. On the other hand, an expert analyst who gave a briefing on that this morning, Alexander Harchenko, he says he nevertheless thinks that's very much the worst case scenario. It's more likely that Ukraine's air defences will be successful in preventing such a highly damaging strike.